Okay, I'm
You are
recording on this end, and also, one second. Yeah, I'm recording on that end also. Um, Hold on, actually. Okay, cool. All right, so we talked about it a little bit before. It's weird, it's bummer you can't see me, but sucks actually that you can't see me. Maybe we could switch to the phone, I guess. But we talked
Ooh,
about it before,
you
and
can call in on your phone and I can see you and you just mute your phone and it records
like I
me.
FaceTime you
Well, no, like your phone can
on
call
Zoom.
into the Zoom and there'll be three of us,
Okay, okay,
but you'll mute your phone.
okay. I'll give it a try real quick. Uh, hmm, so
You
I'm
can
gonna
hear
type in the
echo.
same code that I sent you.
Yes, sir.
Okay. The meeting ID is not.
All of this should be on the podcast, right?
Yeah, you're right. It's recording. It's all on the podcast. We're recording right now. The debacle.
Says inability to utilize technology.
The debacle. It won't let me. Oh, wait a second. In fairness to me, this is the first time attempting to Zoom.
So everybody that's out there listening, whenever you do the first time of anything, prepare to fail.
That's right. Okay, wait. I gotta turn that off. There. Oh,
Booms. Look at you.
no, it's still echoing.
It is echoing.
I need to mute you on my phone. What if I just turn the volume up? Hello? Is
Yes,
that better?
way better.
No, but you're echoing.
Because what I have to say is so important that it's going to be repeated twice.
No, no, but it sounds like, I mean, it's okay. It sounds like you're a god, but
Wow.
I don't know how to fix that. What the heck? What if I don't know if it's coming from my phone. Yeah, it's coming from a phone.
Can
Now,
you turn down the volume
now,
on your phone?
is it working now?
Yes, it's working.
Okay,
Am I echoing?
no. Okay, now it's working. All right, so we're both here. I mean, I guess I should look at you here, actually. uh, Thank you, Mr. Price, for joining us on the podcast.
It's a
Um,
pleasure.
I know we'd spoken about it a bit before, but basically, for my audience sake and for us, is we're going to do a normal session that I would do with Mr. Price anyways. And part of the reason I'm doing it, and he knows this, and I'd like you to interject as well if you have something else you want to add, is basically, I think that all of us struggle with the same mental issues, and there's a huge rift between asking for a sports psychologist and feeling bad about maybe having a quote unquote therapist. So this is like my way to help all of us see that they're really helpful. You have to find a good one, like anything else. But also, we want, sorry, I'm trying to figure out how to see you. Okay. We also want to enable, I think, people to reach out to somebody. And so here I have for you in the flesh, in the computer digital flesh, somebody that you can reach out to and use. And we will set up a platform outside of this to reach him if it's something you're interested in. And after me speaking with him, maybe you say, oh, I would also like to do this. And I can tell you just personally, I've said this to Robert before, I was really struggling from anger perspective, when I first met him, I wasn't playing so much for a particular team in 2017, and I was just angry about everything. And then I started speaking to him, and there's a very rare that you can pick out one particular moment where everything shifted. And for me, it all shifted when I was on trial in Sweden, and Robert and I had created what's called a theme thought, which we'll get into at some point. And basically, I kept repeating the theme thought, and I'm not like one of those people that won't tell you my theme thought. My theme thought for this particular match was to look big, like to um, look for bigger passes. And we can explain why theme thought's really helpful. But I was doing this theme thought, and I'm a defensive center mid for the most part, and I scored 2 goals in 2 games, and that basically secured my contract. And of course, I did it. I'm the one who played. It took years of practice, but I can tell you for me personally, I'm somebody who in the past kind of does a roller coaster of performances. And after speaking with Robert, I've become much more, if let's say 10 is like your best game ever, I play, 7 out of 10, like every game. And then sometimes I'll have a 10, and then sometimes maybe I'll have like a 7, but it never goes below that anymore. Where before it'd be like a 10, then like a 6, then like a 2, and then like a 10. And I can tell you, and Robert will tell you as well, you're really, as opposed to having a 10 and then a 2, coaches want somebody that's going to give you a 7 every game consistently all the time. So, with that said, Robert, nice to have you here.
Yeah, it's a pleasure. And the cool thing, Zeb, I really, when people are looking, if you will, for somebody who is a mental skills coach or a performance enhancement coach, I mean, in this field in different countries, we have multiple names. So that clouds this field sometimes. But the reality of this is that this is a proactive, for the most part, field. And so, although Zev came at a time where he was feeling like, I don't know what to do, he's also found value in the services now where he's at currently, because there's this understanding about when you're mentally sharp and you're mentally tough, how do you then maintain that? And so I like to look at what I do is it works great when someone is struggling, but it also works phenomenal when somebody is looking to maintain or increase that mental edge when they're not struggling. Um, and as an athlete, we always don't want to necessarily acknowledge that we are struggling. And so that's why finding somebody that can kind of work on your mental game is such a challenge for people. I think there's just an innately scared, if you will, to do that. And I did call out those people who don't believe that they're scared, but they
I
are
think
scared.
to add to that is after working with Robert, as opposed to going, okay, now I feel better, which is kind of, I think, like my brother says it well, like self-help books are kind of obnoxious because you keep having to buy them. That's the idea, is you keep having to work on them, and then you go, well, why should I keep buying the next self-help book? They're just taking my money, quote unquote. And he's a finance guy, so being robbed of his money is very offensive. But I can tell you that I've been working with Robert consistently, and now after getting out of the hump of being, stuck in a place where I was struggling, now I see him in a consistent basis. So now most of what I do is preemptive or pre-work. So through meditations that he's given me or through notes that I take after we talk, I can then avoid pitfalls as opposed to get into the pitfall, then I have to get out. And that's, I think Robert would agree, when it comes to performance, like you don't want to have to go into the pitfall in order to figure out how to get out. You want to avoid it in the first place.
Absolutely. I mean, this is because of what you said earlier, is this ability for an athlete to be able to perform consistently great. That's the key. I mean, we could all be good, but we we don't want to be good. We want to be, we really want to be able to go from good to great. And so the only way to do that is to be consistent or intentional and deliberate about the mental aspect of whatever sport it is that we play. So super important.
Okay, we've sold you enough. Everybody knows you're great now. So let's get into a concept. Um, so I think last time we spoke, I told you about I was having some issues with my back, and I also just want to preface this real quick with that being as open about myself, I think, is a really helpful tool that we're afraid to do with our coaches and we're just afraid to do with people because it's scary sometimes. But I can tell you by being like completely transparent, it helps me through certain aspects, and you just have to eventually not care what people think because people will have opinions. But anyways, so I told you about my back. It's considerably better, which is great. And now the next challenge for me is coming back at a pace that allows me to not get hurt again. Um, and that's something that I've actually, of all the mental things that I've struggled with, it is that virtue of patience. So that way I can come back without getting hurt again. So I have a concept, I have an idea in mind, and then I'd like to bounce it off of you.
Sure.
Normally, with most injuries, you can kind of create like a schedule. But with this particular injury, with the back injury, the PT explained that it's constantly about how I feel. How do I feel today? How do I feel tomorrow? How do I feel after I did something? And so it's difficult to create like, okay, this day you do 2 sets of this day you do 10 sets of that, which I'm very good at because I'll do whatever anyone tells me. So now what I'm thinking is maybe it could be beneficial to create a schedule but not stick to it, but have something in mind, because my biggest problem is I just rush. I mean, that's what I do all the time, is I'm just constantly rushing. So I'm hoping to create a schedule that allows me to also hand it into the coach, because this is something players struggle with for sure, is like, particularly the situation I'm in. I'm an international, they need me to play like now. Like they want me, even though we're still early in preseason, they want to justify the money they're paying me, and so there's more pressure for me to play quickly. But if I come back too quickly, I'm going to get hurt. So the concept was, if I give them this schedule, then maybe they can be like, oh, we can, instead of bothering me every day how I'm doing, they can go, we've looked at Zev's schedule. His approximate time for return is X. How does that, what is your opinion?
Well, obviously sharing with your coaches your intention to come back as quickly as you can based upon this schedule is good. So the question I would have, maybe even as the coach, is saying, okay, what is the typical recovery time? Try to get some of those details.
Right.
And then
That's a good point.
share with them that this is what your recovery time is going to look like.
That's a good.
Typically, right, at someone of your young age, you will recover faster than whatever the typical recovery time is. So
But it's
you'll be able to.
also a really good thing because, and I'm saying this for me, but also for people watching, is when you give a coach a time of return, it's sometimes good to exaggerate the time of return and come back early versus, no,
Yes,
it's great.
yes,
It's a great idea to give them typical recovery time.
yes. So now they have, because your whole idea at this stage, for anyone who's injured, really is to create the right expectation.
Right.
um, they already know that you, at least they I should hope they know that you have all of the desire in the world to want to play yesterday. But
Definitely.
you also in your communication to them are talking about how they're able to protect the investment over the over the long haul. So, do they really want you out there for the preseason games, or do they want you out there at the end of the season? There's a difference in the playoffs or something like that. So there's this understanding that we signed you for the long haul and not for a short period of time.
Right.
You can flash greatness for 2 weeks.
Right.
So just communicating that to them and being transparent with them and just simply saying, hey, look, I want to be able to play into the playoffs. The best way for me to do that for you guys and give you the most maximum value is to kind of make sure that I'm following this, this rehab schedule or this comeback schedule. So when they hear that, they also hear that you're thinking not only about yourself, but you're thinking about the long-term future of the team, which the coach is also thinking about. So now you've aligned yourself with him and management too. So now they're like, okay, so he's just not nursing this injury just to nurse it. he's actually actively seeking opportunity to come back as quickly as he can, but so that he can last much longer. And
I
so
think
that's again
the
more
concept
value.
of like you said, the concept of aligning, because the biggest trouble I'm always having, and one of the reasons I decided to stay with this team is because they do know that I I'm not just sitting around wanting to take their money and not play. That and aligning with the coach will allow them to basically have the patience to allow me to come back at a reasonable period. Okay, so I'm going to do that. I'm gonna look up. That's a great idea. I didn't think of that. I'm gonna look up the typical recovery time, so then they can reference that, and then I will create a relative schedule, and I will kind of give it to them. And then for you, just so you know, my in my head, like today, I'm gonna do some jump roping and some lunges. That's the protocol. As of right now, the PT said is you have to be able to do 10 sets of 30 jumps on both feet, 10 sets of 30 jumps on right foot, then your left foot, and then lunges with 30 kilograms, which is like 60 pounds ish. Um, yeah, 60 pounds. And then after that, you can begin running or begin running. That's what he's arguing, and I feel pretty confident that my back is capable of that. My bigger concern is the rest of my body as I come back. Do I, not get
Yeah.
too sore too quickly? So that's my plan there. You have looks like you have a thought, and then I have another idea.
Yeah, I mean, even those exercises, it's like as an athlete, we want that to happen, right? We want that to happen right now, and you want it to happen today. Um, and even in our rehab, I so believe in setting goals that we can master. I mean, that's the expectation, right? So that's like the end of when you're ready. So even today, I would be saying, can I do 7,
Mm,
and kind of gauge it,
right.
because this is all part of that. The PT is saying, right? He said 10 is when you're ready, or when you're good, or when you should feel great.
Yeah.
Um, well, let's do 7 today. See how I do, with the intention of doing 10.
Hmm.
So um, I think even in that process, it's like, because that's how we are. Like, oh, 10 is what I'm supposed to do today. Awesome, I'm going to do it, and we we push through that without actually, even in the rehab, setting up the nice schedule or the goal that that we should have for the day. So maybe it's not 10. Maybe it's actually only 7.
Right. Okay, I totally agree. Uh, and I've started to work on that the last couple days. So um, I'm at, like you said, kind of gauging the difficult part with this particular injury is when I do the exercises, I don't feel pain in my back for the most part. It's the next day and things like that. But I totally get what you're saying. The other thought I had for you was I saw that you were talking to the guys at the NFL, and I couldn't help but be curious about what you talked about.
Sure. So for those out there, I do a lot of training and speaking to players, American football players who are looking to go from college to the National Football League, so professional football. And so they're preparing and training and getting themselves ready. And so the yesterday I was in at Test Sports Clubs. It's in New Jersey, and really working with these guys around how to tell their story to scouts and to general managers and to coaches. And because again, they're getting ready to do this interview, the biggest interview of their lives, for very few spots on these teams. And so they need to figure out and understand how to tell their story, and how to actually make sure that um, those folks leave understanding who they are, where they came from, and how all of those life experiences will help them be a really good employee, essentially. So a lot of times when we're in college, we don't really learn how to interview, especially as an athlete. We don't learn how to interview or showcase ourselves because we're typically saying, well, just look at the film or see me in the tryout. But when we actually have to communicate those things, we struggle. And so my job there really was to help them do that. And I kind of did that through them, at least this particular time. I will go back a few more sessions, but getting them to understand the difference between the fixed mindset versus the champion mindset, and really getting them to understand like there's a wide variety of that, but in this moment they need to make sure that they have all of the aspects of somebody who is striving to have the champion mindset. So that's what I talk to those young men about, and pretty cool. I'm fresh off of that, so like 3 hours sleep, feeling great.
What when you okay, I had two thoughts. One, um, what is a fixed mindset versus a champion mindset? Obviously, but also I think about it as a player who likes to encourage kids like to do well while I'm playing. And I would be curious of some of the questions also that the coaches in the NFL are asking the players. And I can tell you when maybe I shouldn't do this, but whatever. I'm being transparent. Is that when I see a kid on trial, even though I'm not the coach, sure, I come up with decisions whether or not I think he should be on our team. And of course, like you said, you watch him play, but I'm really not that in. Of course, I'm interested in how he's playing, but that's like the prerequisite. Like you have to be able to play in order to come on the team. But I really want to get to know them as a person, and I see a lot. I can judge a lot of that. I feel like based on how they defend, because that's something that's very personality driven. Do you actually do the work that quote unquote people don't want to do? But are there questions that the NFL or that you're aware of where they that are effective at figuring out what kind of person someone is?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we know that in psychology, there's personality assessments and character assessments. And so a lot of these teams, as I used to do, employ someone who knows how to ask those questions. And so we also train the coaches and the scouts in those questions.
What's like an example of a question?
So one of that we talked about yesterday was, would you rather be a bear or a lion?
Dude, that's a good one. What?
So, you're either way, there's no wrong answer, right? It's a you choose.
Uh-huh.
Um, and it's all about the explanation of the choice. And so we talked about that. So
Okay, wait.
whatever it is,
I want to give my explanation.
yeah, go
I,
ahead, give it up.
I think, gosh, that's a great question. Uh, I mean, obviously, some of it has to do with your interpretation of like your your ability to study animals, maybe. But I know that doesn't ultimately, like you said, it's in the explanation. But I mean, my first thought would be like, I want to be a lion because that's the king of everything. Where the bear, very powerful. I think of a bear as more powerful than a lion, but he's not. He's not the leader. He's not the king of everybody. He's does his stuff, goes and hibernates, chills out. The lion, is the king.
Yeah. So how are you being the king going to help you be a better footballer?
Right. Okay. So,
You see
wow,
where you're
that's
going.
such a cool concept. All right. So I would say like the reason the king is uh, attractive to me is because I do strike my personality. I don't really care if they call me the king or if they give me the captain's armband. I used to, but now I actually really don't care. But I do want to be respected as if I have it, or as if I am the king in the way that obviously I'm not. The coach is he's the quote unquote king, I guess, or you could argue the board or the owners. But I mean, within the team, I want people, if I give an order or a suggestion, I want it to be heard, and vice versa. I want to be the type of king or lion that when an order is given to me, I hear it and listen, and I want that role. The bear just doesn't strike me as a leading the lion. So to answer your question, how would it help me in football? I would take a role of being a leader.
So you're strictly looking at becoming the male lion, you see.
I mean, nowadays could also be the female lion. But
Right.
to your
So,
point, I get what you're saying.
right. So these questions are so unique because the what people sometimes um, so let's just say if you were to choose the bear, right?
Uh,
Um, what do you think are some qualities that the bear has that would actually make you a really good footballer?
that's true. Okay. When I think of a bear, I would be like, when I compare it to a lion, like I'm aware that like male lions in particular are like kind of lazy. That's like what they're known for. And they're like, I'm the king, so you do my shit. You do my
Yeah,
work, rather. I shouldn't swear.
yeah.
And then, but the bear is like, I do it myself. Like I lead by example in a sense. Where
Look at
the,
you now. See
the,
that?
the lion is the status and the bear is the lead by example.
Right. So think about it. Like on a team, you actually would rather have a team of bears than a team of lions, because we actually, and I'm just sharing, is that actually there's only one male lion to the pride.
So did I fail that test?
No, no, no. There's no right or real wrong answer.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
the reality is just we're getting to see your personality. Like so when you
Totally,
walk in the
totally.
room, right? Do you want to be the lead? Like you want to be seen as the king of the room, or are you walking into the room trying to figure out I'm powerful? You see I'm powerful, but I'm also going to be part of this family and part of this team, and I'm going to protect you all in that way, more unassuming, if you will. So,
That's
and
good. Yeah.
bears are unbelievably agile. You know what I'm saying? So,
Mhm.
athletically, uh, they're pretty cool too. They can,
Okay, so
yeah,
I definitely understand. Can you give me another question? Because that one was awesome.
sure. I'll give you a real crazy question. So tell me, have you ever used marijuana?
um,
Oh,
I know. I have used it before.
yes. All right. So, right, that's an easy yes or no question. However, uh, people can go all over the place with that. So, you could either just leave the hanger like you did. Say, yeah, I did, no worries. But I'm not currently, or are you currently, right?
Right.
So we talk to them about being honest a lot of times. So at least for me, is most times in those circumstances, the coaches, the scouts, the general managers, they already know the answers to many of these questions. They do their research, and so if they're asking you the question, know that they know the answer. You
Right.
should be thinking that way. So there's no need to lie about anything because they probably already know it. But the reality of it is yes, I used to, or I current, or hopefully not saying currently, whatever the situation might have been, and then talking about the type of decision that you've made to stop doing that. So, like, say for example, we use marijuana. Not everywhere in the world is it's illegal, but here in the states, most places it is. And so, since it's an illegal drug, when you're doing something illegal, you're now putting yourself in situations and circumstances where there are other illegal activities happening. And so the best way to explain that is I don't want to put myself in that jeopardy because I have a career, I have a team, I have a family, that I don't want to keep risking those things for that because I know that it's not right and it's illegal. So therefore I don't engage in smoking weed any longer.
Right. I That's a great question, and I think weed is a debatable one if you're from California because there's so many
Sure.
benefits. But I get the concept of it is illegal, and I think to your point when you mentioned most of the time we know the answers already. My father does documentaries as I described to you, and he's asking genuine questions like the coaches are. But to your point, he's also fishing for an answer he may already know, but he doesn't know how they're going to explain it.
There you
So,
go.
and there's a movie that he did about NASCAR, and it's a great story. I'm going to ruin it for you. You would like it. Actually, I'll send you the link of it after this. Is Actually, I don't want to ruin it for you since you haven't seen it. But basically, um, he asked a question that's along the lines of like, how did it feel after you won this event, having this horrible tragedy happen, in the same event? And he
Yeah.
knows the answer. Like he knows the answer is going to be, he was, distraught, but he doesn't know how he's going to say it. And he said it's in this particular documentary, it's the best soundbite of the entire movie. And that's his job in a sense. So definitely I can relate to the questions.
Yeah.
Um,
It's all about point of view.
right. One more? Is there one more question?
Sure. Well, I'm gonna kind of make sure that we're tracking, and I want to
Yeah.
make sure that people, like you said,
Oh,
I don't want
yeah.
to
Okay.
lose
So
it.
I was going to ask you about that too. Perfect. And this is being recorded. Awesome.
Yeah. So
Wow. People, so fortunate.
yeah, they don't know. Um, so we're talking about this mindset aspect, right? So this is what it is, right? There's some other layers involved in this, but
I'm
this
just going to pause you just for a quick second. For those of you who are listening, because some people are only listening, I would encourage you to go to the YouTube page so you can see the graphic until further notice. Okay, go ahead.
that's right. So the cool thing about even working with myself, right, and you've experienced this, is I can share my screen, and so we can actually have a session. I know sometimes people struggle with the virtual world, but
Mhm.
the reality of it is we're able to actually um, do really good work like this. So this is a slide that kind of gives people a good understanding of Carol Dweck's work around mindsets. But these are big concepts because we hear this all the time in interviews with athletes, commentators. Is do they have the champion mindset, or do they have a winning mindset? And so I share this with athletes, business people, lay folks. It doesn't matter, because this is so important, because this is what we've learned about this science is able to share and teach us, is that you can use this type of mindset on any task that is in front of you, whether it's sport, putting together puzzles, um, it doesn't matter. So the reality of it is this is like, are you a person that's green, ready to go, right? The champion mindset. Are you actually looking to just develop skill in a way that you're going to start to embrace these challenges that are given to you? Are you going to be able to persist in the face of setbacks, even acknowledging, as we did in the beginning of the call, that setbacks will occur? Are we just going to tank it? Are we going to figure out a way? Are we going to get creative, like we just got creative? Those things are going to, that's important. And then we're going to see our own effort as the key to mastery. So it's not about winning or losing or the outcome itself, but it's the effort. And this is where it talks about, for you, those goals that we have to create, even in our recovery time, right? In our training, in our getting back, our PT sessions. And then obviously learning from criticism. People struggle because they don't want to hear when they're not doing a task well. And in essence, we should be wanting to hear when we're not doing something well, so that we can actually grow and improve, right? That's super important. And then the last one, where for athletes is always kind of an interesting struggle, is being able to be inspired by the success of other people. That one is so unique because if you think about it, you want to beat somebody when they're at the top of their game. If you're on a team, or you're playing another team, or if you're trying to take a spot, you want to take that person's spot when they are at their best, because that then tells you something about who you are. It means that you too were at your best, and you were good enough that day to do what it is that you need to do. So you want people to go out and work hard. You want people to be successful, because that then allows you, when you succeed, to know that you put in the work that you need to put into it. So I kind
And
of
I
share
would
these concepts in this way.
totally, and we went over this, and we don't have hours, unfortunately, to talk. But for those who are listening, like to me, this is the what really helped me a lot when I told you about that moment in the game. So it's something that I really struggle with personally is the first three, like embrace challenges. Sure, that's no, of course. Persist in the set, yeah, of course. Like that's no, I'm not saying these are easy, but for me, these are kind of givens. See, the effort is key to mastery, of course. But these last two are really difficult for me because of the concept of balance. So, in regards to ignoring criticism, sometimes if you, I, I would take all criticisms personally. So, I think there is a degree of going, coach has said this, like I've had coaches say, like, you played a bad game. And then I'll go, I am a bad player and subconsciously a bad person. And I think it's also important to go, just because it's the coach's opinion doesn't mean he's right. Like, we all have different opinions, doesn't mean you played poorly. And it's very easy because the coach is in an authoritative position. He's the lion in a sense, that what he says, you just see it as truth. And he's also a father figure, and these things play a role, as we've talked about before. So I just think it's important that taking criticism, in if you then take the criticism and it offends you and you go because you feel it's true to you, then you have to take it in. But if you go like, I disagree with that criticism, I played in a game once and coach took me off at halftime, and I didn't understand why. The next week he brought me in and he pointed out all these things that he didn't like, and I disagreed with all of them basically. Now,
Mhm.
part of me has to go, he's the coach, so I'm going to try to adjust to his ways. But that's something that's really helped me, and this is, I say this with a grain of salt, and I think it depends where you are at in your career, but I've been in a place where I try and change in order to appease him, and I play worse because I'm not doing myself. I'm thinking about what he wants, and I'm trying to do what he said, and I don't play well. So I think it's a difficult thing to describe in words to know where the balance lies, but I can tell you that messing up in that balance over and over again, I can tell you that I have like this feeling in a jar in my belly of sorts where I go, oh, the coach wants us to force them out wide. Okay, I understand the concept, and I do agree, or I understand it and I disagree, but I understand it. And if we do it together as a team, it's better than if I do my own thing. So I will then force the player outside, and then I can do that. And if the coach says that we need you to play more often, in this particular case, the coach was like, look, I wish you had made this overlapping run here, and I wish you had, I still have the meeting very clear in my head, and then I wish you, had played, longer passes here. There was instances where I was like, wow, that's a great point. Like, I'm going to work on that aspect. And then other ones I was like, I don't understand what you're saying. So how am I supposed to replicate it in the future if I don't understand the criticism? So then I need to ask more questions. And in that particular instance, he viewed my questions as being skeptical of his opinion. And that was not it. It was, I just don't, how am I supposed to replicate it if I don't understand exactly what you wanted me to do? He wanted me to make an overlapping run as a defensive six. And I was like, well, when are the cues for me to know how to do that? And he didn't really help me. And then ultimately I tried to do it, and I didn't do very well at times. So there's that. We go. I know you put up this slide, but go back to the other slide for just a second,
Sure.
and then we can definitely come to that before we run out of time. Is this one is more? I feel even more so than the criticism one. So I struggle constantly, still to this day. It is the main reason why I have theme thoughts that we'll talk about it when we at some point. When I see another player do well, since I was a kid, I would compare myself in all ways, and most of the time it would work against me. Actually, every time it would work against me, because I'd be, while I was playing, like if we were playing what's called possession, where you try to keep the ball, and you know all these terms, but you're trying to
Yeah.
keep the ball, and Robert, by the way, is very inept in soccer, so just because he works with the NFL, he understands the concepts. So in possession, I would see a player not lose it, and then like I would be watching him not lose it the entire session, being angry that he hasn't lost it yet. And obviously that took away from my own performance. And a tool that's really helpful is the theme thought, to have something to draw. Because if you say to yourself, don't think about them, it's like, don't think about jumping off the cliff. What are you thinking about? Or if I tell you pink elephant, don't think about the pink elephant. You already have an image of a pink elephant in your head. It's impossible. So the theme thought is really helpful. But then also when you encourage them to do well, it's this really weird psychological aspect that Robert explained to me, that basically when you almost like let go and you say like, dude, great pass, and you give them a compliment, it like the thought of you being angry that they're doing well disappears. And it's really counterintuitive because you're like angry. But what helps with that is what Robert said earlier, which is the better they do ultimately, the better you will become. even if say you're not playing minutes, for whatever reason, the better they do, the better it will draw from you. And I just kind of believe in the world of, I wouldn't say karma, but when you do good things for other people, good things happen onto you. So whenever that happens and you address, I can even feel the feeling I get when I compare myself to people now as I sit with you, is like you want to go out of your way to like tap them on the shoulder. Touching is like a huge one. And then saying, like, as you've said this to me before, or positive reinforcement is a really key term versus just like giving information, a positive, great pass. Like also, and this is, add to this before we switch to the slide, is Robert to help me with this as well. And I know you would talk about it, but I want people to hear it now, is ultimately, especially when you get to a certain level, there's no such thing as better and worse anymore. There's different. Like he's makes a great pass. I'm sure he does, but it's different to your pass. It is not better. It is not worse. Now the coach may like that tool, so he may pick me, say, over you, but it doesn't make you a worse player just because the coach picked me, the hammer, instead of you, the drill. We are two different tools. And I think that's really helpful because when, at least for me, when coaches haven't picked me, I would very quick to go like, oh, that player is my new person I'm competing with. Let me compare myself with him every second of every session. And first of all, you're never going to play like them because you're not them. And third of all, you don't want to be like, you are your own tool. You're your own hammer, drill, and you have attributes about you. And when Robert told me, like, instead of using the terms better and worse, just use different. Now, basically, when I play, I'm like, I see another center mid, which is the position I play. That's very good. And I go like, damn, I'm glad they have those qualities because I have my qualities and they're different and we can both help the group. We can both play, or maybe one of us will play. And of course, I'm not saying I don't get pissed off when I'm not playing, but I play better and therefore I do play because I'm not comparing myself. Okay, now you can switch to the other
Yeah,
slide.
yeah, no worries. Your attention is not on their performance as much it is on your theme thought. Because
Right.
our brains always are wandering, and typically they're wandering to things that we want or we like or we think we need more of. So it's a very common thing. The only reason that I threw this up for us was is how we think slide was about reminding ourselves, right? And I always remind
Yeah,
you
yeah,
of
you told
this
me about that.
is people. Um, Everyone has events, especially as an athlete. If we're on a team specifically, there's always events that happen together, but it's about the interpretation of those events. Those are the thoughts that the coach has, that you have, whatever it might be. And so that's exactly what you were speaking to, is that the coach has some interpretation of the event, and whatever that is, we don't we don't know what it is. If we all had the same interpretation, then man, that'd be weird. But um, but we don't have it, so all the time events happen. I mean, a pass happens, a goal happens, I make the team, an injury, whatever, and everybody has their own interpretation of that. So those thoughts are the things that actually drive the things that we feel and the things that we do. So
And
those are the
on
things that ultimately impact our performance.
And on this slide, for those listening and haven't had a chance to go to YouTube, it says here events that happen, and then points an arrow to a bubble that says interpretations. And you showed me, I asked you about this once, and I said, like, how do you um, say get the same, how do you get over post traumatic interpretation of something? So, like, if every time the coach tells you no, how do you get over the interpretation that you're a bad player? And then you told me that example of how people, like, after they've had been raped or something horrible has happened to them, they will have them repeat the incident but with objective realities that are in the situation. So like you walk through a blue door, saw a red lamp, and what happens is not that rape is good or is okay, but you, as opposed to thinking in a rape case, and I'm speaking here as studies of what I've read, and somebody who else who's experienced it, happy to have you on the podcast, and you can tell me I'm wrong, is that you're able then to see like that you're not a lesser person because this happened to you because of the objective realities of you were physically forced of in this case, and it's not because you're a bad person or a lesser person. And by um, recognizing the objective realities of the situation, it really helps. So in this case, if the coaches told me, you're not going to start today, my immediate emotional interpretation, even as I sit with you now, I'm already can feel that feeling of anger and why he doesn't think I'm X level. But the reality, the objective reality is like, okay, I will not be running around at the same time as the other people running around. And immediately that leads to a different emotion, which is the next bubble. And that emotion is now like, okay, that's the facts. Those are the facts. And now my physical state is, okay, what's something that I can do? I can watch while I'm on the bench. So when I come on, I can do my part. And then the last bubble here is it encourages performance. So this for everybody, and what time is it? I've lost track of complete all time. But like this is a session with um, Robert here, and so that's what's really cool about this. And yeah, so yeah.
Cool. We didn't always share screens all the time. Tons of presentations and concepts that are easily seen for folks. So when we're doing these kinds of calls, so it's a pretty cool thing. So yes, Dev, our time has come
Yeah.
To the end.
I have one other thought real quick.
Please ask.
Is first of all, we'll do this again. I'll book a time with you after we get off. But then also, it would be really cool. The questions that they asked the NFL guys, I would love like a PDF of that.
I could put something together for you.
Yeah, that would be cool to talk about for next time because like all the questions you asked, like I'm still turning in my head the bear concept, and like that it's it makes so much sense. And one of the reasons I asked too is, so I guess is maybe when I imagine a lion, this is kind of when I depict it. And again, I'm being very transparent here. When I have teammates, I want to. One of the things I that makes me a good player is that I help other players do really well, partly because I know their personalities. So if I pass it to their right foot, obviously I know if they're right footed or they needed their right foot at that time. But then if they mess up, I can encourage them in X different ways based off their personality. If there's somebody that works really hard and never doesn't need to mess up, it's a positive reinforcement. If it's, a little bit lack of thought and they need a wake up call, then I can say like, I can ask a question. What can I do to help you do better? Because this performance, and of course it comes to me as well. So anyways, it would be cool because I want to use those tools to like I would love today. In fact, I'm going to go to training. I'm going to ask one of my teammates like, would you rather be a bear or a lion? And like, I'm curious of what they'll say because then I'll get to know them a bit better. And we've all talked about this, like the chemistry of a team is really important and blah, blah, blah. So cool. Thank you very much. Let me just stop recording and we can finish out. Okay.